You can always count on the MAGA 6 of the United States Supreme Court to crush your hopes and dreams and let you down. And we just had an oral argument involving, I think, probably the most important oral argument since at least the immunity decision related to Donald Trump, certainly top 5 in the last 30 years, happened this week. Court's back in session. And, I'll give you our, we have our commentary here of what went down about the Voting Rights Act Section 2, whether it's going to survive. That means whether 20 or 30 congressional seats around the country, primarily Democratic seats in a sea of red, primarily black and brown people, are going to survive, or they're going to have maps changed so that they lose their jobs. Are we going to be 100% white districts in places like Alabama, South Carolina, Louisiana, Florida, and the rest? Because, well, we weren't doing it because they'll be able to argue now with the United States Supreme Court. Well, I know it looks like we were getting rid of all the black people as Congress people. Well, we were just getting rid of all the Democrats. They just happen to be black people. Anyway, we cover it on MeidasTouch Legal AF podcast. Here is a clip. So let's turn to our final segment here on Legal AF YouTube podcast. I don't know where I am sometimes. Legal AF podcast. It'll go up on the YouTube eventually. And talk about I said before, and I have a video up on YouTube for Legal AF. I said, listen, I don't deal in hyperbolic imagery, but this case is an existential threat to the Democratic Party, to black and brown representation in Congress for a generation. And it doesn't look good. I said that before the oral argument, even though Roberts and Kavanaugh in a prior case in 2022, 2023 involving Alabama sided, we were like shocked at the time, sided with the moderates and the liberals to make a 5-4 block to approve a voting map that used race to create a new district. I wasn't confident that they were going to join with the moderate wing again when it related to Louisiana. And what was up for grabs in Louisiana was a map that was drawn by the legislature of Louisiana, MAGA Mike Johnson's home state, in which they went back to the drawing board, literally, redrew a map after their first time around. They only came up with 1 district out of 7. That's like 14% or something. That would be a black minority majority district in a state where 1/3 of the state is black. And it's like, no, I know you keep saying it's politics, but the law says even if you're saying it's partisan, not race, look at the results. Now, the problem is that there used to be, blue dog Democrats and Democrats that could get elected in red states. That's like over. We are so polarized that I'm even amazed there are 22 Democratic seats in the sea of red. And most of them are black and brown in states where it matches or comes close to their racial composition in the state. And then the second map came out. First, Louisiana said, all right, we're okay with this map. We defend this map. And then the Supreme Court made a ruling about affirmative action at Harvard, and it reverberated throughout. It's the reasons the Stephen Millers of the world and others went after every DEI program, every woke program, is because of the Harvard ruling, which was the way to stop race discrimination is to stop discriminating based on race. Thanks for that tautology, MAGA SCOTUS. That's it? That's what you're giving me? And so from there, they were like, well, anytime even an ounce of race comes into the decision, that it's invalid under the Constitution, except when it came to the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act passed in the 1960s as part of the Great Society, sponsored, if you will, by Martin Luther King Jr., signed by Lyndon Johnson. It was a way to put into practice and action the 14th and 15th Amendments about there should be no law abridging the right to vote. And ever since Roberts became the Chief Justice, over the last 20, 30 years, he's been trying to get rid of the Voting Rights Act. Now, he found a way to side with the Alabama map, but I didn't think that was going to happen again. And then Kavanaugh, who sided with Alabama a couple of years ago, he said, shouldn't there be a time limit on the Voting Rights Act? Shouldn't it sundown after a certain period? Where does it say that in the statute? Congress spoke. It was a major question. They answered it, and they answered it as there's no expiration date on it, on civil rights, on Black voting rights. But they keep talking about it like there's a timer. Like, you went to the refrigerator and your yogurt expired. I'm like, what are you even talking about? But that became a driver for the conversation today, as did, can race be used at all? Can race be used? But if partisan decision-making always overcome race? What was your takeaway from the 2-hour, it was scheduled for an hour, 2-hour oral argument today about the Voting Rights Act Section 2 and lawsuits like it?
So first of all, I think the lawyer who represented Louisiana was excellent. I thought she was great and just was so sharp and made all the right arguments. I found the oral argument very frustrating. It was the biggest gaslighting oral argument. I like watching and listening to the Supreme Court justices who lean far right ask questions. It's like they totally gaslit her and threw softballs to the gentleman who was representing Louisiana. And like, isn't there a case called such and such? Tell us about that case. And he's like, oh yeah, well, in that case, you said this is not, you can do this and you can't do that. Right. And what made that happen in that case? Well, there was this map that was wrong. Like, just throwing him softball after softball to make the points that they clearly want to make. And it was just really, it was depressing, honestly, because they basically, look, Louisiana is apparently 58% white. Yet, and then in the census, that's what came out, right? When the census came out and they said, oh, but we only have one Black district in all of Louisiana. And so 85% of the districts are white, essentially, but only 57% of the people are. And so they redrew the map to give a voice to the Black voters. And one of the things that came out of the oral argument is Black and white voters both aren't monolithic voters, right? That's not like you only vote Republican if you're white and you only vote Democrat if you're Black. But what the studies have shown is typically is if you're white, you will most likely vote for a white candidate, Republican or Democrat, and same with Black. And that was some of the things that came out of this argument. And what they basically were saying, what the appellee was saying, was essentially the Voting Rights Act was supposed to be a remedial statute. It's supposed to be to remedy. It's not like it says, if everything is going swimmingly in your state and you have representation for minority communities, the Voting Rights Act doesn't come into play. It only comes into play when you have things like a census and it shows that there is not representation. Then there's this remedial measure that you can come in and redraw and take race into consideration. It's not the only factor, but you take it into consideration. And what was really depressing to me is the fact that the law allows you to make a partisan districting map. So they could do anything they want to make it more Republican or more Democrat, depending. But you're not allowed to take race into consideration. And when you look back to the history of the Voting Rights Act and why this was passed in the 60s, and you see where we are today, and that they are purposely, they're just adding one more district, right? They're not like, this is just literally one more district, and that they're going to say you're not allowed to even take it into consideration ever. That race can never play a factor, I think is just really sets us back a long time. And it was really depressing. And the questioning, like I said, was very gaslighty. I just thought, it was just ridiculous.
And Ketanji Brown Jackson was very frustrated with how the conversation went. which was all about trying to give cover to the MAGA six to sleep at night. Well, we're not taking away race. It's just
Exactly.
it just needs to be overcome by partisan.
Exactly.
So it's not that there's 7 out of 7 districts and that'll result in Louisiana all being white. Is that okay? I mean, let's just take it back. Is that okay? What if I would have been an advocate there? I would have said to whoever was asking me the question, if you take away the Voting Rights Act and you find that it's either unconstitutional, Section 2, or you find that race can never play a part in drawing the map, are you okay as a United States Supreme Court? And can you live with yourself if the result is there are zero districts in Louisiana, despite 1/3 of the state being black minority majority district? Are you okay with that? If you're okay with that because that's where you're going with this line of questioning. No, see, that's one of my problems with the stuffy air and protocol of Supreme Court advocacy is that while I agree with you, she did a beautiful job, as did the NAACP counsel, who also argued, but they never, like you and I are more like pugilistic trial lawyers. I would stop a trial judge in their tracks on something like that and said, I see you're going down a certain road, Your Honor. Are you okay then with there being zero representation for black and brown people in the red southern states? And if you are, then I guess you'll rule that way. But I'm not. And I think that violates the 15th Amendment and the Voting Rights Act. But you never see an advocate do that. Why is that?
Well, there's a certain decorum, I guess, in the Supreme Court, and there's a certain. I remember I went to go watch a friend argue in the Supreme Court, and the friend, and then they said, "Oh, do you want to become a member of the bar of the Supreme Court?" It's like an honorary thing. So obviously, I don't have the experience, the appellate experience. That's a very particular type of experience to argue in the Supreme Court. I said, "Sure, I'd love to do that." And they said to me, "Okay, well, you have to wear a skirt suit." I was like, what do you mean I have to wear a skirt suit? Because they know I only wear pantsuits, and I for no reason. I didn't even realize it. I'm more comfortable in court wearing pantsuits. I always have been. It's just a personal preference. I don't know why I have it. It just is. And I was like, I'm not trying to make a statement or anything. It's just a personal preference. And I said, I don't even own a skirt suit. So I'm going to wear a pantsuit because that's what I wear every day when I go to court. And she's like, you can't, you have to wear a skirt. And then suddenly now I'm offended. I'm like, excuse me, I have to wear a skirt suit. Anyway, I found one, I borrowed one, but I was really, I was irked by this. But I say this because there are all these like old timey traditions when you go to the Supreme Court, hear ye, I mean, whatever.
Oyez, oyez.
Oyez, oyez, whatever it is. Yeah, they like all these weird stuff that just...
They were wearing powdered wigs, like...
I know. Like not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
Anyway, so I guess there are ways you're supposed to argue in front of the Supreme Court that...
that's the ramifications.
Yeah.
And the answer to my question is that the MAGA Six and Clarence Thomas are willing to have 22 seats, primarily held by black and brown people, eliminated from the map. And now there you go. And now the Democrats are going to have to fight hard if this ruling comes out. The other question is, I'll leave it on this. The other question is timing. We'll know if they're really trying to help Donald Trump more than usual based on when they release this decision. A major decision like this generally comes out in June or July so they can get out of town and go on vacation when they drop like a bomb on us. The only reason the Dobbs decision came out earlier is because it leaked. And then in March of that year, we were like, oh, crap. So we had several months, and then it finally came out a few months later. But if they release it in June or July, it's really too close to the November midterm election. It's only like 3 months, and that's borderline on terms of what they call the Purcell Doctrine, where they wouldn't make the map change for this coming election. They would do it for 2028. But if they issue it early, that's the big telltale sign. When you said gaslighting, we see this thing come flying out in like March, right? And you and I report on it. That means they wanted to help Donald Trump at the midterms because March is plenty of time before November for the new maps, for everything to be redistricted, because that's what they're going to try to do. Donald Trump has been pushing the states to use the census and use whatever comes out of the Supreme Court to redo all the maps to eliminate Democratic seats. That was the fight that broke out between Texas and California, over 5 seats down in Texas, 5 seats up in California, depending upon a referendum in November. But I don't know how we as a party find 20 new seats.
Well, maybe what happens is Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, maybe what they do is they take a really long time to write their dissents. So it's not going to get out in March, that it's going to...
Closer to. Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so that you do not have to. It's like a TED Talk meets a law school class. It's every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's on the MeidasTouch network. Hit the subscribe button if you're there. It's on Legal AF YouTube. Hit the subscribe button if you're there. It's on audio podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple. Leave a 5-star review and watch it and listen to it there and help us continue to move up the ranks of the top-rated podcasts. It's not ego, it's algorithm. The bigger we are, the more your voice is heard. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.